back to the channel. Today we're going to unravel some incredibly complex events in Genoa. Rumors are circulating around the Newman family, but what's the truth? In this video, I'll summarize the plot points that will be revealed in the next episode. Stay tuned to see what happens. Welcome back to our channel, where we dive deep into the heart-stopping drama of Genoa City. Today is a thrilling day to explore the intense emotional roller coasters and shocking twists that have kept us all on the edge of our seats. Let's jump right into the latest explosive updates. The sterile, blinding lights of the Genoa City Memorial Hospital operating room illuminated a scene of absolute, heart-stopping terror. Nikki Newman, the indomitable matriarch of the Newman dynasty, lay vulnerable on the surgical table, her life hanging by the thinnest of threads. What began as a high-stakes but meticulously planned procedure to remove a malignant tumor compressing her optic nerve suddenly spiraled into a catastrophic medical emergency. Monitors blared with deafening, erratic alarms as her intracranial pressure spiked to lethal levels, forcing the elite team of New York neurosurgeons to abruptly halt the operation. The sudden complications sent shockwaves through the medical staff, freezing the room in a state of sheer panic. The threat of permanent, irreversible brain damage or imminent death hung heavy in the sterile air. As the surgeons scrambled to stabilize her crashing vitals, the entire city seemed to hold its breath. Will the beloved Queen of Genoa City survive this sudden, violent betrayal by her own body? The genesis of this horrifying ordeal was steeped in a toxic brew of pride, fear, and deeply buried secrets. For weeks, Nikki had been silently agonizing over blinding, debilitating headaches and a terrifying, gradual loss of her vision. Instead of seeking immediate help, she chose to suffer in the shadows, masking her physical deterioration behind her signature stoicism and flawless facade. Her primary motivation for this dangerous deception was a profound dread of Victor Newman's pity. Following their recent explosive marital disputes and her heartbreaking decision to return her wedding ring, Nikki refused to appear weak before the man who had controlled so much of her life. She navigated her darkening world with a desperate, quiet dignity, isolating herself from the very people who could have saved her. But how long can a woman, even one as strong as Nikki Newman, fight a lethal enemy entirely alone in the dark? The fragile wall of secrecy Nikki had so painstakingly built was ultimately shattered by an unexpected betrayal of trust from her own flesh and blood. Victoria Newman, driven by a fierce, protective instinct that bordered on ruthless calculation, uncovered the devastating truth about her mother's failing health. Unable to watch Nikki march blindly toward her own demise, Victoria made the agonizing choice to break a sacred promise. She bypassed her mother's wishes and marched directly into Victor's office, unleashing the horrifying reality of the optic nerve tumor upon the unsuspecting patriarch. This revelation was a massive gamble, a desperate plea for intervention disguised as an act of defiance. It ignited a firestorm of anger from Nikki, who felt profoundly violated, yet it set the wheels of salvation into motion. Was Victoria's disclosure purely an act of desperate love, or was it the opening gambit in a much darker, unrevealed family conspiracy? When the crushing weight of Victoria's revelation finally settled upon Victor Newman, the legendary ruthless billionaire was instantly reduced to a terrified, remorseful husband. The man who had spent decades manipulating markets, destroying rivals, and orchestrating the lives of his children was suddenly powerless against the microscopic, malignant cells invading his wife's brain. Victor's immediate reaction was a frantic, desperate mobilization of his infinite resources, pulling every string to fly in the nation's top neurosurgeons. Yet, beneath the flurry of high-stakes medical logistics, Victor was drowning in a toxic sea of profound regret. As he paced the hospital corridors, the ghosts of his past manipulations haunted him. He realized with sickening clarity that he had squandered precious, irreplaceable time engaging in petty wars and emotional manipulation, driving away the only woman he truly loved. Will this agonizing epiphany permanently alter the dark trajectory of Victor Newman's soul, or is it already too late for redemption? Outside the restricted surgical wing, the waiting room transformed into a suffocating purgatory of despair and unspoken resentments. The Newman family, typically a formidable, united front of wealth and power, was fractured by the sheer terror of the unknown. Victor stood rigidly by the window, his jaw clenched, his eyes reflecting a tempest of fear and fury. Victoria sat tensely, her hands tightly clasped, bearing the heavy burden of being the one who exposed the secret, while simultaneously managing her own hidden, mounting health issues. The silence between father and daughter was deafening, punctuated only by the distant clinical sounds of the hospital. Every passing second felt like an eternity, an agonizing countdown to a verdict that could irrevocably shatter their dynasty. In this suffocating atmosphere of dread, what dark, suppressed family secrets are bubbling just beneath the surface, waiting to detonate? Amidst the collective family agony, Nick Newman fought a grueling, invisible war that threatened to consume him entirely. While his mother fought for her life on the operating table, Nick was locked in a brutal, sweaty battle against the agonizing demons of a severe fentanyl addiction. Having recently survived a near-fatal overdose, a terrifying ordeal where he was ironically pulled back from the brink of death by his historical abuser, Matt Clark, Nick was a fragile shell of his former self. His body trembled with intense, suppressed cravings, his mind screaming for the narcotic escape that had nearly killed him. The crushing guilt of his addiction, compounded by the horrifying realization that he might lose his mother while he was so profoundly broken, tore at his sanity. Nick was a ticking time bomb, desperately trying to maintain a facade of strength for Victor and Victoria. Will the unbearable stress of Nikki's surgical crisis push Nick over the edge into a fatal relapse? The suffocating tension in the waiting area shattered into a million pieces when the lead neurosurgeon finally emerged through the double doors, his expression grim and exhausted. Victor demanded answers, his voice trembling with a vulnerability rarely seen in the Newman patriarch. The doctor's words fell like physical blows. The surgery had encountered a catastrophic, unforeseen complication. A sudden, massive spike in intracranial pressure had forced the medical team to halt the procedure midway to prevent immediate fatality. The tumor remained, and the surgical trauma had left Nikki in a highly critical, unstable state. The horrific prognosis echoed in the sterile hallway. If she survived the night, the risk of permanent, irreversible brain damage or total, lifelong blindness was astronomically high. The invincible Newman family was entirely brought to its knees. How will Victor survive the agonizing reality that his wealth and power are utterly useless against the fragility of human life? Adding fuel to the emotionally volatile atmosphere, the hospital doors slid open to reveal Jack Abbott, his face etched with profound, unyielding concern. Despite the bitter, decades-long corporate warfare and the recent venomous ultimatums Victor had issued regarding Nikki's friendships, Jack's deep, historical bond with Nikki compelled him to rush to her side. His arrival instantly ignited a dangerous spark of jealousy and territorial rage within Victor. Even as his wife hovered between life and death, Victor's possessive instincts flared, viewing Jack's presence not as comfort, but as an intolerable intrusion. Jack, however, refused to be intimidated, standing his ground out of pure, enduring affection for the woman who had once held his heart. This tense, unspoken standoff over a dying woman highlighted the tragic, unbreakable triangle that had defined their lives for years. Will Victor's blinding jealousy provoke a disastrous confrontation in the very corridors where Nikki is fighting to breathe? Shortly after Jack's tense arrival, Sharon Newman hurried into the waiting room, her presence bringing a wave of complex emotional history. Sharon's primary concern was immediately directed at Nick, her keen, empathetic eyes instantly detecting the subtle, terrifying tremors and the sheen of cold sweat that betrayed his withdrawal. Having survived her own harrowing traumas, many of them inflicted by the very man who had just saved Nick, Sharon recognized the fragile, dangerous edge upon which Nick was balancing. She moved to his side, offering a silent, fierce anchor of support amidst the swirling Newman chaos. Yet, Sharon's mind raced with dark suspicions about Matt Clark's sudden reappearance and the twisted, manipulative web he was weaving around her family. She vowed silently to protect Nick from both his internal chemical demons and the external predators lurking in the shadows. Can Sharon's unwavering love and vigilance save Nick before the darkness completely swallows him whole? While the family waged their emotional wars in the waiting room, Nikki was trapped in a terrifying, silent purgatory deep within her own subconscious. As the anesthesia and the sheer trauma of the cranial pressure held her in a comatose grip, her mind projected fractured, haunting visions of her tumultuous life. She saw the glittering heights of her triumphs and the devastating, whiskey-soaked depths of her past alcoholism. She felt the phantom weight of the Newman pendant, the echoes of Victor's booming voice, and the loving, desperate faces of her children. In this dark, liminal space between the living and the dead, Nikki's renowned fighting spirit was being tested against an overwhelming, seductive pull toward the peaceful void. She was fighting a battle no surgeon could assist with a war of pure will against the dying of the light. Will the fierce, indomitable soul of the former stripper turned billionaire queen find the strength to claw its way back to the realm of the living? The tragedy of Nikki's current state was deeply compounded by a shocking, unrevealed secret she had meticulously orchestrated just days before her collapse. Convinced that her days were numbered and terrified of Victor's overbearing, tyrannical control over her legacy, Nikki had engaged in a covert, highly dangerous legal maneuver. She had secretly summoned Christine Blair Romolotti to draft an ironclad, confidential will deliberately designed to bypass Victor's authority and distribute her vast assets according to her own hidden agenda. This ultimate act of rebellion, born from a lifetime of feeling suffocated by Victor's protection, was a ticking legal time bomb. If Nikki were to succumb to her surgical complications, the reading of this secret document would unleash an unprecedented, catastrophic civil war within the Newman dynasty. What devastating truths and shocking beneficiaries has Nikki hidden within those sealed legal pages? Unaware of the legal betrayal brewing in the shadows, Victor stood alone before the intensive care unit's observation window, gazing at the fragile, bandaged form of his wife. The tubes, the ventilators, and the relentless beeping of the life support machines painted a picture of absolute helplessness. In a rare, shattering moment of total vulnerability, Victor wept. He placed his hand against the cold glass, making a silent, sacred vow to the universe. He swore that if Nikki was spared, if she was returned to him, even in a world of absolute darkness, he would dedicate every remaining breath in his lungs to being her eyes, her shield, and her unwavering servant. He promised to dismantle the toxic, controlling aspects of his love and replace them with pure, selfless devotion. But in the ruthless, unforgiving world of Genoa City, are such desperate 11th-hour bargains ever truly honored by fate? As the long, agonizing night dragged on, the Newman family remained suspended in a brutal state of agonizing limbo. The pause surgery had left Nikki's fate entirely in the hands of time and her own battered resilience. The crisis had stripped away their wealth, their arrogance, and their power, leaving only raw, bleeding humanity. Nick's secret battle with fentanyl, Victoria's hidden health scares, Victor's crushing guilt, and Jack's lingering devotion all converged in a chaotic symphony of grief. The impending dawn promised no relief, only the terrifying possibility of waking up in a world where the Newman matriarch no longer reigned. The foundation of Genoa City was trembling, threatening to collapse under the weight of this singular, catastrophic medical emergency. When the sun finally rises over the skyline, will it illuminate a miraculous recovery or the tragic, devastating end of an era?